Hello, fellow travelers. Welcome to another episode of the Overland Trail Guides podcast. My name is Ben. I'll be your host. And today we're going to be talking about the Lost Coast 4x4 Trail in Northern California. This is episode 00005, something like that. And you can check us out online at www.overlandtrailguides.com. I think we have over 10,000 miles of routes all over North America, lots of routes in the Southwest, the desert, Mexico. If you want to get your overlanding on in winter, we got plenty of options for you. And if you just want to drop us a donation, you can also check us out, check the information. We'll have Patreon up there if you want to do that as well. Other than that, let's get into it. So today, we have Jared Horan with us. Jared, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Jared Horan. I am delighted to be here with Ben. I discovered Ben about 6 months ago, and I've had a couple of trips so far, and we're going to talk about the Lost Coast. I currently am driving a Toyota 4Runner Limited. It's a 2016. I have just recently put a new suspension on that. I'm excited about that. Put some Fox shocks on that, and I'm considering putting some big tires in it, but that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I've been trying to get Jared to go up to a 33 inches. I know he was a little bit reticent about doing that. Is the jury still out on that right now?
I'm thinking the jury's still out, but maybe I think right now I'm leaning towards, I've had some Toyo Open Country AT2s that I've been using, 265, 70 or 17s. I'm thinking I might move to the 285s, and that might be a sweet spot for me in terms of giving me good on-road capabilities, at the same time giving me some great off-road capabilities. Yeah, so that's my first world problem right now.
Right now, we live in first world problems over here on this podcast. We're very fortunate, and we recognize that. But this is what we love, and we love doing. I'm going to give some background on the trail for people that are thinking about doing it. How long you might want to plan if you do this particular route, the terrain that you might expect, the season, and all that stuff. So, the Lost Coast 4x4 Trail, not to be confused with the Lost Coast Trail. So, people
Definitely
always Googling the Lost Coast Trail. It's a very relatively popular hiking and backpacking trail that runs along the Lost Coast, and the Lost Coast 4x4 Trail essentially parallels it, but it's going to follow majority dirt roads and some pavement as well. So they're two different things. So that's something you want to be aware of. They're in far Northern California. And most people, because they're coming from the Bay Area, Sacramento, places like that, I mean, people definitely come down from Oregon as well. But most people tend to run it south to north. So starting in northern Mendocino, going up to Humboldt. It's by the coast. You can do it in 2 to 4 days. We did it 2 days of driving. I would recommend 3, just because a lot of stuff to experience out there. And if you can, 4, because there's some really great things that you can get out on foot. You could check out. There's some great hiking trails in the Lost Coast, but then Humboldt Redwoods. That is something you really need to get out on foot to check out. It's about 4 hours from San Francisco. The season typically is April through October. If you get a heavier than normal rain season, it might be towards the end of April or even to May when they open some of those gates up. So there's some gates north of Usal that do close during wintertime. That's going to prevent you from doing one stretch of dirt. So that's something to be mindful of. And the technical rating. It's green for the most part, and then I would say it's very mild blue. So there's a section north of Usal. You could probably get through it, and we'll talk about Jared's experience on this. Probably with one of the newer RAV4s, I'd say you could get through it. If you're going to go through on a Subaru, you might want like a Forester. The Outback might not have enough ground clearance on some of the stuff out there. Nothing too challenging, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the typical terrain, dirt forest roads. There's some steep sections. There's some bumpy and twisty and eroded trail between Usal to Four Corners. And then there's some pavement intermixed in as well to really kind of connect some of these other places too. You don't need a heavily modified truck by any means. If you have a stock 4x4, like a stock Tacoma, a Jeep, 4Runner, going to handle it no problem. And why don't we get into it? So, Jer, you'd never done the Lost Coast before, right? Even though you have family up in the
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, so we have family that live outside of Garberville, which is quite close to where you would make the turn off Highway 101 there to move into the last to Usal Beach, basically. So it's long been on my bucket list, but it was really great to go out there with you, Ben. I mean, definitely, I've read about it, I've heard about it, I've watched a lot of the YouTube videos, but I think it's something you have to put on your bucket list and go do. So it really was fabulous to take that time and go out there. It was excellent.
Yeah, and then people think of the Lost Coast, at least when they're going out in a vehicle. Usal Beach is obviously that point of interest, that place that always pops up. It's not very difficult to get through, and I think with coronavirus and people not jumping on planes, a lot of people are out camping. It's already a very big thing in Northern California. Uh, Fortunately, unfortunately, however you want to look at it, there's just been a lot of traffic at Usal Beach. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So we met San Rafael,
Yeah.
because everybody that we went up there with lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's about a 4-hour drive from San Francisco to get out to Usal. And we met on the 101. We met with Ed and his brother, Jer, and then my buddy Vince, who came along with his dog, and then I brought my 5-year-old as well, and that was kind of the crew that we brought, keeping it small while all this craziness is going on. Not trying to spread this crazy coronavirus. Hopefully, it'll be over soon. And then we burned up the highway, and I mean, you've done it many a times. You have family up there. But do you want to kind of explain what that drive is like, kind of once you get into Sonoma and start getting out of the Bay Area?
Well, for me, always being in the Bay Area and being Southern Bay, I just love going over the Golden Gate Bridge. That's always a high point for me. And then as you cruise out through Marin and the countryside changes and you start to become more rural, I love that place. You start to go up further into Northern California and it becomes more rural. I just love doing that.
Yeah.
And then you go through the little towns along the way, the little places you can stop. Although we didn't do a lot of stopping, I guess we did stop for lunch. That Greek place was pretty good.
It was. Yeah.
I made my own sandwiches. I like to cook my own food.
I don't remember what it was called. I had a falafel and some other stuff, but it was pretty good. I would definitely stop there again. Definitely a little hole in the wall, but not bad. City of Ukiah, if you want to check it out.
Ukiah, yeah.
Great little town as well. So yeah, on the way to, most people are going to go up 101 and cut over. You get up into the wine country up in Santa Rosa, and then it just gets rural and just really, really beautiful. It's just something else. It's spectacular. So we cut over on Highway 1 in, was it Leggett? I always forget where we cut over. I think it's Leggett, or a little bit further.
A little bit further, I think, isn't it?
Laytonville to Leggett, somewhere up there. There's the Chandelier drive-through tree up there. Anyways, when you're going to the 101, it's when you can actually cut south on the 1, and that's where we cut over. You can come up from Fort Bragg as well. And then we get down towards the coast, and you hit a very nondescript, indistinct, however you want to describe it, dirt road. You really need a GPS unless you've been there a couple of times before, because it's really easy to pass. And that first section is, I think it's about 6 miles to get out to Usal, right? And you don't really need, I see people driving minivans out there. I'm not sure I would advise that. You can. But I think, something like a Subaru was probably more appropriate to take out there. So this is your first time going out there, Jer. What was kind of your, as we're driving out there, you're seeing the coast, what were you thinking, and what was kind of your experience of experiencing this for the first time?
So I think there are different kinds of people in the world. There's like mountain people and there's like ocean people. I kind of think I'm a blend. So for me, I mean, Big Sur and the Big Sur views are sort of world famous. Even if you go to like some of these TV shows, that one big HBO TV show showing Big Sur. So that kind of resonates with my soul a little bit. And I have to say, driving out as we kind of came onto the coast and came around there, and sort of the ocean came into view, it was just spectacular. It was what we stopped a little bit, I think, in a couple of places and took some pictures. And you see
Yep.
the whole view down into the beach. It's epic. I mean, it does give you that big surf feel, the wildness, and just the coast. And the road, like I said, wasn't that bad. I could
No,
imagine though, if it was rainy or if it was muddy, it would be a disaster. So probably the
definitely.
right time of the year and checking the conditions. But yeah, when you come around and hit the coast and you start to come down, and then just as you get closer to the beach, you got to cross over that wooden bridge, which is kind of a
Yeah,
bit of a fun thing to do when you head out to the coast. Yeah,
totally.
wonderful.
And you're being polite because we stopped Ed's brother and myself. I mean, I just got a drone at that time, so I was
Oh,
like, I
damn,
gotta
yeah.
launch it. There was that nice little clearing. Um, I was a little bit nervous, I was shooting
Yeah.
it out half a mile over to the ocean, and I hear these horror stories of the drone malfunctioning and just dropping. But it went all good. I got a couple of decent shots, not bad for, not too much practice under my belt. And then I remember we kind of split up because I wanted to get some drone shots
Correct.
right as you kind of drop down to Usal and you hit those hairpins, and there's some really great lookout spots. And on top of that, you're not supposed to fly in State Park, and I was kind of right on the edge there, so I was
Yeah.
like definitely going to take advantage of that too. And you guys went down, and I remember we kind of got split up, and I know we said we were going to go to the beach. There's a lot of people kind of at USAL this year because of COVID. And I know I was trying to find you guys and I couldn't get radio contact, but I think everyone found each other, right?
Well, we did, but I think there's a couple of things were interesting. One was with COVID. I think the
Mm-hmm.
amount of people that were there exceeded our expectations, which with hindsight, it was to be expected. To
Yeah.
counter that, we hadn't really tried to be there early. We did not want to roll in there. Now you do recall people were rolling in there at 10:30, 11, and 12 that night.
Yep.
There really were people rolling in late, but Ed and I went ahead of you coming into the area, and we headed out towards the beach area. But my recollection is, and I think you've talked about this before, that there's quite a bit of camping in the trees as
Mm-hmm.
you sort of move out through that sort of mesa area, whatever that is, out towards the beach. We decided we'd head out to the beach, and we found a real nice place that looked pretty good on the beach. But then with hindsight, we decided that we would come back around and sort of came to the edge of the trees where we parked. And then I think at that point, our radio started to work again, where we started to get involved. And then Vince and yourself came down and we just hung out there. But the beach was absolutely spectacular. I mean, you have to experience it. But I mean, going back again to the whole notion of ocean and mountains, the stars are a huge component of being in the outdoors for me. And once the sort of the night came, darkness, and the stars started to come up, and some of the ambient lights sort of stopped, just being out there with the ocean and the waves and the stars was beautiful.
Yeah. And then there was that bull elk, if you'll recall, which just kind of appeared as we were setting up camp, totally undeterred by
Oh my
anybody
God.
there, just doing
Yeah.
its thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it was eating like 20 yards from us, and I definitely wanted to keep our distance with Thomas there,
Oh
but
yeah.
it could care less about us.
Yeah. I mean, we came in and that bull elk was sort of over to the left, sort of by the trees, sort of discreetly set apart.
Hmm.
But then, as bold as brass, it just kind of moved on down. Now, I had read and seen pictures of there being herds of elk moving through there, but I didn't really expect to see anything at this time with all the people that were around there. But that elk came
Definitely.
up. There were some beautiful herons there as well.
Hmm.
So we really were treated to that. That elk was spectacular, and he literally
Yeah,
was very close to us.
I know. We were right there next to where the creek goes through, so that's
I
where he
got a
was
couple
kind
of
of
nice pictures of
browsing.
that elk. I really
I
got some
know
good
you
pictures.
did.
They were good.
You definitely did. You definitely did. Some really great ones, and I think of the heron and some other stuff
Oh
too that I
yeah.
saw.
Yeah.
And that sunset. I mean,
Mm.
I think we have to paint the picture of the weather and everything. So I forget what the weekend was. Was it October or was it November? I'm having a difficult time remembering. Anyways, it was like the perfect Indian summer. So late October, Even into like early November, we get these like super warm days in Northern
Beautiful.
California where the fog completely subsides. There's no ocean breeze. And that was one of those days. I
Yeah.
think we rolled out there, it was just, it was totally clear and it was warm too,
Oh
as I
yeah, shorts
recall.
and t-shirts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is not typical at the beach in
No,
Northern
not up
California
there.
any time of year.
No. It can get cold.
So,
That wind can be cold.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And so you saw, if you haven't heard about it, check it out. USAL Beach. It's kind of your typical Northern California beach, surrounded on both sides by some really steep cliffs and mountains, redwood trees, Douglas fir. Just a really incredible place. And I wanted to talk about USAL for a little bit just because it has blown up so much this year in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And I would attribute that to number one, coronavirus for sure. I think Instagram as well. People started to realize it's not that far from the Bay Area where people didn't want to go out there for whatever reason before. Like I was out there last year. I think it was April we went out there and there was only like 2 trucks on the beach or something like that. To put in perspective. Now I was speaking with somebody that goes out there quite frequently, and he was telling me when he was out there on Labor Day weekend, it was just vehicles all the way down the beach, and you could see where all the fire pits were too.
Yeah.
So, could have been 100 cars on the beach or something like that. So it's definitely not equipped for that. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is a really cool and special place. Technically speaking, you're not supposed to camp on the beach. Now, state parks is really kind of not enforced that, although I heard things are probably going to change out there. And I think they do need to, just because people aren't really taking care of the beach. And that's what I wanted to talk about. I'm not going to tell you to camp on the beach or not to. Technically speaking, the campsites are in the woods and they're actually marked, and they have outhouses as well. So there are outhouses out there. Now, what's happened this year, because there's been so much traffic, and I was talking to some of the state parks employees, they've had to lock those outhouses because they can't service them enough.
Yeah.
And people unfortunately don't bring their own equipment to bring their own waste out there. So if you're thinking about going out there, please bring your own equipment to bring your own waste out of there. It's not guaranteed that those outhouses are going to be open. And if you do camp on the beach, it can be quite a bit of a walk to go to one of those outhouses. So please, please, please do that. And if you see any trash, anything else, just do your best to clean the place up, because state parks definitely has an eye on this place. And I'm not sure what's going to happen. We don't want it to be like Big Sur, which has been closed for the last 6 months just because everyone's been trashing it out there. And this is a special place. So please take care of it. Anything else you want to say about USAL?
I do want to echo that people need to take care of things. I mean, it really is a special place, and you do want to be prepared to bring everything that you need and bring everything out, and the whole leave no trace. I mean, we talk about that, but you really got to take that seriously with places like this, because like you're saying, Pruitt Ridge and some of the Big Sur places right now have literally been trashed.
Yeah.
And people who are not properly equipped are going out. They're not properly equipped with the right equipment, but even their vehicles are not equipped to be doing what they think they're trying to do.
You reminded me. Do you remember that FJ Cruiser that got stuck out on the sand?
Oh yeah.
Yes. So
that's another.
I have 2 stories that I'll share with. So I had taken my wife and my son Thomas, our 5-year-old, and our dog out to use. So my wife, definitely not an overlander. This was about as far as I could push her. It was about 6 miles of off-road, right? And we met this guy named Brent who lives out in Humboldt, in Mendocino, the Cove area. And really cool guy. We hit it off because he used to live in Marin, lived in Fairfax. We knew a lot of local things, and we're just totally talking about it. So I'm walking out to the water with Thomas because there was a rock labyrinth out there that he wanted to see. And I hear, "Is that Ben?" And sure enough, it's this guy, Brent. He's out literally in the same spot. Talked to him because he was dealing with all the fires early in the summer. You'll recall when we were up in Mendocino, The fire was right at his property line. So everything turned out crazy, but it was just kind of, there he is again. I guess he goes out there quite frequently. So Brent, if you're watching, what's up? Nice little shout out. But on the way back after talking to Brent, I see this FJ Cruiser with this couple, and I assumed it was theirs. Well, they're spinning the back tires, it looks like four wheels not engaged, lockers not engaged. And talked to them, and they're like, yeah, this isn't our vehicle. I was like, well, you want to put in four-wheel drive, put in the center diff lock. I wasn't going to tell them to air down because I don't know if they were ready for that. It was kind of a last step, but they got out eventually. But going back to what Jer said, you want to be prepared. It's these little things, and we've all been there, and we've all done dumb stuff, and you learn about it afterwards. But like, if you're going to drive in sand, engage in four-wheel drive, let your air out of your tires first. Don't go out there in a minivan. I think we saw that as well. Our neighbor had like a sedan or something, right? And just abandoned the vehicle, and I don't know where they went. But you see a lot of that at USAL, just people, I won't say not making smart decisions, not making informed decisions, right? So be informed, take care of it, don't get stuck, don't trash it.
That sounds good to me.
Cool. So we camp at USAL for the first night, got a really cool camp spot, and the next day we wake up and we decide we're going to head north to Mattole River. This is a pretty short trip. We tried to do this all in about 2 days. Like I said, I would probably do a minimum of 3 if you have the opportunity, because going from USAL all the way up to the Mattole River area is a pretty long haul.
It is.
If you want to stop, if you're just going to go on like a dual sport or a dirt bike, you could probably get up there pretty quickly. But if you're going to stop along the way like we did, it's an all-day trek, and we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. Yeah. So we get on the road, and we start heading north from USAL Beach. We're passing the campgrounds, which, by the way, there's some really nice campgrounds in the redwoods and in the trees back there. Mm-hmm. And this section of road, what did you think about it, Jerry? I know you did hit some, I call it a very, very mild blue section, kind of right on the edge. But this was the twisty section, the turny section in the woods, some off-camber ruts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I do have full-time four-wheel drive in my vehicle. It's the Limited. And it's very, very pleasant. It goes along and does whatever. And the road wasn't that, as you said, it was a blue. But there was 1 or 2 places where I actually moved into four-wheel low, just because there was a couple of off-camber places where you kind of had to do a double take. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, if I was just really just slow and deliberate, but there was one section where there was a kind of a drainage type thing across the road. And I tried to kind of find a line through it, and it just wasn't going to do it. So I just had to back up and take a different line. But I think if I'd taken a better line originally, I would never have had a problem. So I wouldn't put it on it definitely green to maybe low blue. There really wasn't a lot going on, unless I'd say if it had rained or if you were at the wrong time of the year, then I could imagine that road could have been tricky in a few places.
Definitely. If it had just rained, and like I said, they do put, there's a gate just north of USAL.
Yeah.
And in this dirt section that goes up to 4 corners where it hits pavement, there's another gate. And they definitely close that during the rainy season, just because, like you said, that could be tricky for sure. Yeah. I have mud trans on mine, but even in some all terrains and 4-wheel drive, I could see a 4x4 struggling through some of that stuff. And I don't want to scare people out there that are kind of just getting into overlanding. This is a really good place to start overlanding for a novice or for a beginner. There's nothing here that's going to, as long as you're not smashing it like the Dukes of Hazzard, there's nothing here that's going to destroy your vehicle or anything like that. There's nothing that's really that challenging or anything like that.
I definitely would agree with that. I think it's, again, apart from the crowds and the whole COVID business and, taking care of your making sure you're properly equipped, great place to go, and possibly during the week might even be fabulous. We obviously went Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Absolutely.
During the week, if you have the luxury to do that, I could imagine you would find some spectacular peace and quiet. And those roads
Definitely.
are easily navigatable. They're not like there's no real big bouldering going on here.
Hmm.
It really is a fire road that just gets a little rough in places.
Definitely.
A great place to go for a beginner or for a novice, I'd say.
Yeah, and going back to you saw during the week, probably right now in winter. It's the end of December for us right now. Probably not going to be a lot of people out there at the beach. I don't know how much beach is actually there because of the winter storms and everything this time of year.
Yeah.
But definitely the people aren't out there, and I honestly kind of like going out to the coast when it's stormy and windy and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that section from Usal up to Four Corners, not really any views. You're kind of in the Redwoods and Douglas Fir. It's a little unfortunate. You kind of look where you are on a map and you're like, great. As you get to Usal, you have these really cool views every now and again. Unfortunately, this section, it's pretty tedious. It's a lot of driving this way, hitting bumps and everything like that. And our buddy Brooks did it in his Pennscour. And now I understood why he hated that section of road so much. 6 wheels, no power steering, with a super heavy stick. And I'm sitting in here rolling in like modern luxury in a Lexus Land Cruiser. I have an LX 570, and I'm just cruising. And I can only imagine what it would be like in, 4-ton beast or whatever, because it's a lot. If I had to do that for more than, I think it's like 24 miles or 20 miles, that would be very tiring.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges as we think about. I'm married, by the way. I know Ben mentioned his wife. That would not be my wife's idea of fun. Sitting in the passenger seat for that time would not be good for the marriage. So definitely contemplate that if you are bringing somebody with you, that they might maybe want to drive for a portion of the time, or you might want some other kind of distraction, because as Ben says, it's a bit of a hike, and it's a bit of a rough hike without the spectacular views and stopping and checking things out and taking pictures.
Now, the nice thing though, once you leave Usal, you kind of leave the crowds behind. I know we had one fellow that was behind us, and then another one that came through as well. But other than that, nobody up there. And I think we might have passed. I can't remember if we passed somebody the other way, or if that was the guy that we passed going the same direction. So that's the really nice thing. Once you leave Usal, you really leave the crowds behind. That's just where everybody goes because it's super accessible. And I think most of them are just camping and not kind of really doing the overlanding thing. So we get to the pavement, and we decide that we're going to go have lunch down at the visitor center on the way to Bear Harbor. And again, the weather was spectacular. Again, this is really just like a 3-mile stretch of gravel. You used to be able to drive out to Bear Harbor. I think there was a landslide, and the county has decided, it's not their priority to fix it. So unfortunately, there was another really great campsite, like another 10 miles down the road, really remote. You can't get to it now, at least not now. We'll see if they open it up. I don't know if they will. But that visitor center was actually pretty nice. I thought it was a nice place to stop.
Oh, yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, that really does give you sort of a sense of the whole Lost Coast hiking experience, if that makes sense. Because you get you're right on the coast, you get right down there. It's beautiful.
And I would recommend stopping there just because that section that we were talking about driving, you are in the trees.
Yeah.
You're not, it's 2 hours, no views. You're just in the forest. It's moderate driving. I'm not going to say it's hard, but it's tedious. So it's nice to take a break. You have a view of the ocean. Yeah. When the visitor center opens up again, you can go check that out. You can sit on the steps. They have this kind of nice little exhibit as well. So there's some really cool stuff over there too.
And they also had a very, very nice outhouse.
They did.
Sometimes.
It is. It's nice to have that, and some running water. I do recall that as well. And then from there, we jump over to Shelter Cove, which was only like 20 minutes away. I think it was like a dozen miles up a mostly paved back road with a little bit of little bit of gravel sections. If you're not familiar with this part of Northern California, this is basically like the epicenter of the Emerald Triangle. This is just, you wonder how people make money up there. They have a farm, they grow marijuana, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes. So you want to respect private property. If you see a greenhouse and everything, don't get nosy. You leave them alone, they're going to leave you alone other than that. So we get out to Shelter Cove, which is a really remote community in Humboldt. I guess it's southern Humboldt on the Lost Coast.
Yeah.
And it's this really, I'm trying to remember yes, I remember how we came in. So you come up kind of on the top of the ridge and you drop down from like 2,000 feet up. And it's this crazy like 20-degree grade. And they have a little airstrip out there. There's an old lighthouse. And again, just, we hit like the best weather out there.
Oh, the weather was superb. It really was gorgeous. Yeah.
And the nice thing when you get to this little lighthouse, you have this great view looking south, right? And you can really just see that kind of Big Sur type of view of the mountains crashing into the Pacific.
Yeah.
The dark green with the forest. A lot of people out kind of looking at the tide pools and stuff like that. And then, I'm going to launch the drone again and get some pictures, obviously being mindful of air traffic. So I think we had a little snack there as well, just because we knew we were going to have to make some good time getting over to Mattole. What did you think of Shelter Cove?
Well, I'm a great fan of like what I call little fishing villages or type small little kind of closed communities like that.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. It's just a small little community and it's set in the most beautiful place. I guess it's got a great history. I mean, there was that statue right there of one of the founders, I guess, going way back. And they had a blurb on the history of the town and what it was about. But yeah, I love those little sort of towns to kind of wander around. And yeah, and that by the lighthouse was gorgeous. They've really done a nice job of, renovating that and making it really pretty. And that little park there, you could definitely, actually, I think there were some local residents that were meeting there to have a little sort of a town meeting, and they were all socially distanced at the time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so there's a whole.
Did not notice that.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, it was very, very nice. Seemed like a very nice place to live.
Yeah, and there's a couple amenities out there. I think there's a little saloon. There was like a little kind of barbecue bar and grill type of thing as well. So if you want to stop and have lunch or pick up, I don't think there's fuel out. There was fuel out there. We did go to the general store and they did have one pump gas. So this is one of those gas stations. They'll likely have gas, but it's the type of gas station that could run out as well. So I wouldn't bank on it that you're going to get gas there, right? I would kind of plan on that you need to go a little bit further just to be aware of that.
But the general store was fairly well stocked. I mean, really
it was
a great general store. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then went back to the general store. I got some junk food. And then my buddy Vince, he had to go back home. So I think he got a pretty good idea of what the Lost Coast is about. But this next section, and I love all these different places in the Lost Coast, but I honestly, I really love this next section because there's like nobody out there. And just some of these views is really spectacular. So we leave Shelter Cove. We're going back up this crazy mountain again. It's like 20 degrees for like 3 miles, going 2,000 feet up. And then we peel off left. And so before the southern part of the Lost Coast, you're mostly in California state parks. And then when you head to the north side, you're actually going into BLM land, which is part of the King Range National Conservation Area. There, they manage a bit more land, but we go back on dirt. And the nice thing about this is we're like 2,000 feet above the ocean.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
Gorgeous. And it's kind of intermixed with some views all around you, trees, but it's not like before. And the road's easier driving too. The first road is literally turn left, turn right, turn left, go over bump, go down, turn left, turn right. And this is definitely a little bit more paved, higher speed of travel. And I know we're both mountain bikers, right? You're an avid mountain biker. I'm not riding as much as I used to. I definitely need to be riding more, but there's a really cool mountain bike trail out there as well. That's
Yes,
called
you
the
pointed that out
Paradise
to me.
Royale. Yeah. And there were some people riding there
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So if that's your thing, they have a nice little skills park with some jumps. I think the loop is like 12 miles. They recently added like another 6 miles of trail there. They have like banks, berms, but it's nice, kind of like little flowy cross country trail if you want to bring the mountain bikes. And they have a BLM campground right there too. So you can camp right there, ride from the campground. We didn't camp there. We kept going. Yeah,
But that would be a good place to stop. And if you were into mountain biking and to go and spend a night there, get up, get a ride in. Yeah,
definitely.
that would be a good place.
Yeah, it's not one of those places like Whistler where you could probably spend 10 weeks
No.
and you're still discovering new trails. It's kind of like spend a day there, maybe two, because there's really only kind of one very small trail system, and then you're probably ready to move on. But we kept going north because our goal, like we said, was to get out to Matole Beach. And there's just this one section as you kind of start to get close to King's Peak. And it's very much like Big Sur. And I know I keep saying this. It's because you're about 3,000 feet above the ocean. And then all of a sudden, it just opens up.
Beautiful.
What were you thinking when we had to kind of go up some of those steep turns to get there? You know, we kind of left the nice graded part and nothing technical, but some pretty steep sections with some hairpin turns. I didn't put it in 4 low, but you know, I run full-time 4-wheel drive.
I think at that point I was back in full-time 4-wheel drive, which is the normal driving mode for the limited. Because there was nothing really heavy going on there at that point. But I think that I mean, I know we keep going back to Big Sur, but that if you have been down to Big Sur and been up in Pruitt Ridge and been up in the hills up there, this will definitely provide sort of echoes or memories of that, because you're riding on top of this ridge and you're driving around and you have this ocean view. And especially with the weather that we had, I mean, I could imagine some days you'd be up there, you'd be completely socked in. I mean, you wouldn't see your nose from your elbow, basically. But the day that we went, it was spectacular. Visibility as far as the eye could see. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really something else. It's really only a couple of miles that you kind of get those spectacular views, at least in the section that we're talking about. I think it's up on Saddleback Road. But what I really love about this area is there's nobody up there. We stopped for a good 30 minutes.
We saw nobody.
Once we got on dirt after leaving Shelter Cove, I think we passed a minivan right at the beginning, right when we pulled off. I do recall passing some traffic. There's some residents out there, so I don't know if they were going to that or maybe going to the mountain bike trail. But after that, nobody out there. So yes, there's a lot of people at USAL, but really once you leave USAL, for the most part, you leave the crowds behind. And I need to put together the video. I've been lagging. I'm sitting on all this footage. I asked Jared for the footage that he has. Thank you for sharing that. I do need to put that together, and I do have some drone shots up there that are really cool. What I liked about that particular spot where we got out, number one, obviously looking down into the different canyons as they go down to the ocean, but you can get up behind you and look the other way a little bit too. And see some of the mountains in interior Humboldt.
True. Yeah.
The drone helps, you know, when I'm launching it up there and I can oversee the trees, but it's pretty cool up there.
I seem to recall, though, I think Dan's drone, as it went aloft, there was some wind aloft. He had a little bit of trouble doing a little drone recall. I mean, the wind was that strong that the drone was having a hard time, coming back, but he brought it back. Yeah.
It's funny you brought that up because I was a little bit hesitant about launching the drone, and Dan is a pilot, so that's his full-time gig. And he's like, no, you can launch it. And I have a newer Mavic 2, and he had an older like DJI Phantom something. And mine came back relatively easy, but like you said, he was struggling a little bit to get his back in because it was kind of probably right on the cusp of maybe not flying, but we flew anyways, and I got some good photos. So we hop back in the cars and we know we need to go over Mattole. Uh, some pretty steep sections coming out of there.
Yeah.
Like during the dry season, not a problem. But if you go up there, and I think you can access the BLM land, the King Range National Conservation Area, basically outside of the north side of the trail, any time of year, I think.
Probably.
But it would be probably sketchy on some of those trails. I'm not sure I'd want to drive them when they're wet or muddy, just because the incline is pretty steep in a couple of spots.
I agree. Yeah.
But we drop down, we start making our way over to Mattole. Mostly dirt. Then we got to get on some pavement for a little while to get over there as well. We make our way over there, and we get out to the beach. And my experience going out there, it's usually only half full. Coronavirus, no vacancy.
No
and we're like, but it wasn't the end of the world, because, and this is pretty typical of what I've experienced out at Mattole. USAL tends to get better weather, and I think Shelter Cove does too, based on the geography, the topography, way things that are shaped. Mattole was windy and cold.
It was.
Yeah.
And especially
beautiful.
When we went up to try and find some camping up off to the left there, as we went up higher and higher and even moved back in towards the hills, we all decided that we were not going to camp there. It would just be windy.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that. Not supposed to camp up there. I'm glad we didn't, because technically it's illegal, just so people know. I guess in the King Range National Conservation Area, even though I searched everywhere on the website, like, can you, usually in BLM land, you can do dispersed camping. Not the case in the King Range National Conservation Area. So you need to camp in a developed campground, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There is the Tolkien Campground, which is the one that was up by the Paradise Royale bike trail. And there are also some other ones between Four Corners and Shelter Cove. So that's when the dirt from USAL turns to pavement on the way to Shelter Cove. There's a couple too over there, but they're there. They're in the forest. I kind of prefer to camp elsewhere. They're nice and peaceful, but no real views or anything like that, like you're going to get a USAL or anything.
Yeah.
So we get out to Mattole, and like you said, we're like, okay, let's go out to I think it's Punta Gorda, which is the abandoned lighthouse out there, which is definitely something, if you have the time. This is why we say try to take three days. If we had an extra day, I definitely would have loved to have taken you guys out there. You park, it's a short hike, and it's this really cool old abandoned lighthouse. And it's kind of this special marker to the people that are hiking the Lost Coast Trail, because they see this lighthouse and they know that their hike is essentially over, right? Because most people do it north to south, or south to north, excuse me. So we get up on the ridge out there, and we see some promising dirt roads. Let's go look over here. Let's look over there. But it's blowing. I feel like I'm in Scotland or something like that. It's just like, it's pretty, it's gorgeous, but it's like blowing a good like 20 knots, just nonstop.
Yeah.
And I think we've all camped in that before. It's not fun.
Not a happy place
trying to
camp with 20 knots.
Yeah.
No.
Trying to cook, would not have been able to have had a fire because of the fire danger, just would have been too much. And then sleeping, good luck with that, right? Those are the nights I get like 3 hours a night. But the views up there, are incredible. Again, I just feel like I'm a broken record. Views. But it's a little bit different this time. So other parts of the Lost Coast are definitely more rugged. This is more like headlands, like you might see north of San Francisco. So a lot more like scrubland, coyote bush, stuff like that. Not heavy forest, or there's like small groves of certain types of pine or cypress or something like that. But you have the Mattole River down there that feeds in the ocean. And then north up the Humboldt coast as well. And again, it was a clear day. So it was just really spectacular.
Yeah, no, it was gorgeous. I mean, I think we were so fortunate with the weather, Ben, that I really did maybe color my perspective, because I have been up there, up by Garberville and around there, when like the weather sets in and you get that sort of gray fog,
Hmm.
gray mist, the rain coming in. So we were very fortunate, but that just means that I think you try and pick the time of the year that'll work, and be prudent with the weather. And we were very, very lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this part of Northern California definitely rains more than in the Bay Area. They get a lot of rain, Humboldt and stuff like that. So
Oh,
if you go in April, you could get rained on. And really kind of the optimal time to go is probably September, October is what I would say.
yeah.
So we're out there, we're looking for a campground. Dan and I launch our drones again. I got some really good shots this time, just
Yeah.
because the beach and everything else. And God, I got to put those together. But we're like, yeah, this is not going to work for even if we find something that looks like it's good, the conditions just aren't ideal. And I should note that we'd gone out to a county campground, I think before, right? Did we go out there and we made a U-turn? I
I
think
don't
at some
recall.
point. So luckily there's another campground out in this area, and it's really the only other option out there. I mean, I would definitely stay in Matola if I had the option. There is a campground a little bit inland that is ran by Humboldt County Parks.
Mhm.
It's A.W. McWay Park, and it's a campground. But the nice thing about it is the sites are pretty big. There's some trees out there. There's some grass, and for whatever reason, not a lot of people camp out there. It's kind of a nice little backup option if you can't camp at the beach out at Matol, which
Yeah.
is really beautiful. What did you think of that campground?
Well, out at Matol, out where we first were hoping to camp, I guess, where there was only about 10 or 12 campsites, though, I think, Ben. Is that right?
A dozen if you're lucky. It's not a
Yeah.
lot.
But it really was a lovely spot. I could imagine again that, and it seemed like they offered a little bit of shelter from the ocean breezes. So it looked
Hmm.
like there were some spots that definitely would be very pleasant to camp at. Lovely place if you get there in time and get a spot. And I think because it was such a limited space, that you wouldn't get some of the craziness and some of the madness that you might get at a larger campsite. So it was very, very pretty. And that whole river and the mountain and the ocean and the waves. And it was, again, beautiful.
Definitely.
Beautiful.
Um, so yeah, if you go to Matol and it is full, I think things are probably going to change once coronavirus, people start getting vaccinated and people are jumping on planes and trains and whatever they're doing. You're probably able to camp out there. But if you can't for whatever reason, you do have A.W. McWay as a backup location, which is really the only backup location unless you're probably driving an hour plus back towards like Eureka or something like that. So that's something to think about. We have a nice, pleasant dinner that night. Get up in the morning. Dan and I are flying the drones again because the river is kind of right behind us. Got some cool shots out there. And I think everybody recognizes that we have a pretty long haul
Yeah.
going back to the Bay Area. Because not only are we very far north compared to where we were, but we're also an hour west of the 101,
Correct.
right? So, but that drive back is pretty nice. It's just,
Well, that's
I
what you
love it out
get.
there.
That was a pleasant surprise for me. I mean, having been up there and gone through Avenue of the Giants many, many, many times, I hadn't actually been to that part where we came in from the coast. And
Hmm.
that section of the forest there, the redwoods, I think is by far superior to Avenue of the Giants. So, I mean,
Let's,
many people might have heard of Avenue of the Giants. It's that section on one where you kind of see the big trees, the big redwood trees. But
hmm
what we saw coming in from the coast, and definitely I think it would be worthwhile to stop there possibly and just hike in those redwoods. They were absolutely, again, spectacular. But that was a
Yeah.
pleasant surprise for me. I didn't put two and two together, but that
And
really was kind of a highlight. I love driving through those redwoods.
I know. I took my dog out for a hike through an old gross redwood cove out here today, and that was never get tired of it. It's
The
just
redwoods are
there's just
special.
something magical about them and very spiritual and calming. So we drive out from A.W. McWay, and we go through the Mattole River Valley, which is, it's got like dairy ranches,
Yep.
greenhouses doing their thing out
Lots of
there.
greenhouses.
Yep, lots of greenhouses, some really big farms too, and it's just gorgeous and pristine out there. It's just like the quintessential Northern California landscape where you have these kind of big rolling hills with oak mixed in with redwoods and other stuff, and just these really pristine barns. And I forgot about this one thing that we saw the day before, and Thomas was the one who spotted it. And I'd shown the picture of it, and I was like, I know it's over here somewhere. I just don't know where. It's the truck in the tree.
Yes.
Yes,
We
which is a very humble
Thomas
thing.
found it. Yes.
Yes, yeah. We're driving by, and he said, "I see it," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's very easy to miss because it's this. I think it's an old Ford truck,
Yeah.
and there's a doctor over there. And I guess the story goes like, well, I wanted people to know where I live, and I put it up there because I could. And so it's basically hoisted up there and like secured on some cables and other stuff like that. But as you drive out, I'm trying to remember where it is exactly. It's in between A.W. McWay and Mattole River, kind of out there on the paved section. And as you're driving out to the coast, it's on your right-hand side, but it's hard to see. You really need to have somebody kind of looking out the window because it's a good like 70 feet into the trees, and you would just probably see a silhouette, even if you're looking for it.
You really have to look out for it, but it's worth taking a look for. You got to stop, pull over, and then you can kind of walk in through the trees. And we got some great pictures, I know.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of weird to kind of just see a truck hanging out of the trees.
Definitely. So we drive back towards the 101, and we stopped and we got some nice pictures just because that one spot was a pretty nice viewpoint as you kind of go up and you crest the mountain, and then you drop down into Humboldt Redwoods, which is really, if you want to see the big trees, Humboldt Redwoods is definitely a park that's worth checking out. We start to descend down into that, and the area that Jared was talking about is called Bull Flat, or Bull Flat Creek, something like that. And you just have these magnificent redwoods that are 300 feet in, like,
oh, beautiful,
10 feet across, 15 feet across. There's some really great hiking trails. I've gone hiking over there as well. I would strongly encourage people to do that. There's some campgrounds over there. There are campgrounds over there, but I totally forgot about this because I've camped over there. So there are a number of campgrounds in Humboldt Redwoods. They're not difficult to get. You just need to plan ahead. If you wanted to go out like we did and try to roll up, there's not going to be anything left. You have to definitely plan like several months ahead. And it's your typical States Park campground. You're going to have people all around you, not getting that wilderness experience so much. But the Redwoods really are something else. And there's some really great groves down there. And you can get down to the Eel River too. I think your family, their ranch is right on the Eel River as well, right?
Yeah, well, we're up about 35, 40 miles in the hills behind Garberville, but that Eel River, runs all through that. There's the two different forks, runs all around.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's beautiful country. But even then, one thing that's interesting is right by Garberville there's a hotel, and I'm having a senior moment right now, but it's a hotel that became sort of famous in...
Is it the Benbow?
The Benbow, yeah, in the 30s,
Mm-hmm.
for movie stars to go to. And at one point, I believe they'd even dammed the river and done some things, which they've undone right now. But that's a great place to go if you want to get a romantic getaway weekend or something as well.
I think it's haunted too, right? It looks like it would be haunted.
Oh, yeah. And they've got this fabulous afternoon tea if you're into afternoon tea. But if you did want to have a little romantic getaway weekend with the missus or your intended person or whoever, definitely the Benbow, and then you could explore that whole area, and the Eel River runs all around through there.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, 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 very pleasant.
And so as you go up the 101, and that's in Sohum or Southern Humboldt, it's this kind of like big Tudor looking house sitting above the riverbanks, right? That's white and kind of dark colored on your left side, I think. Yeah. I've always wanted to stop there. I'll have to do it one day.
Yeah. So the afternoon tea and the scones are superb.
That's good to know. Yeah. Scones, my wife is in for sure. You go through Bull Flat, you go through these really cool 1,000-year-old redwoods, And then you get out to the 101 and the Avenue of Giants. And the Avenue of Giants, I think for somebody that hasn't driven it before,
Yeah.
it's worth driving.
Oh,
I think just Bull Flat is just the redwoods are like right there, and you have to drive around a couple of them and stuff like that too. And you can just get out and hike, and it's really, really cool. So the nice thing when you get out to 101, there are a couple places that you can actually drive down to the Eel River. And I forget what the exact name. It's like Leatherwood Bar or something like that. So you can drive right down on the river if you catch it during a warmer time of year. You can go swimming, you can hang out there, barbecue, have a couple of beers, do what you want. There's some great hiking trails over there. I know, especially you being closer to San Jose, I'm north of the gate. We had a long way back to go. That was a haul. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about a 4-hour drive from the Benbow side, Garberville, if you're on track, right back down to me here. So it's a bit of a hike, but yeah, it's worth it though.
And that's it. That is the Lost Coast 4x4 trail. I've done it a few times. I'd kind of love to get your perspective doing it for the first time. What did you think about the experience?
Well, like I said, it was a bucket list item for me because I've with YouTube and just watching things, you got to go yourself. And for me, I'd say it was totally worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the concerns I'd have, like we've talked about, is the utilization right now of the beach. And I think that's a combination of COVID and some other possible factors. But the beauty, the elk coming down, the herons, the wildlife,
Mm-hmm.
and just the actual majesty of the place. And then as we moved up the coast, even though in some places there weren't views, it was still epic. It was still a wonderful adventure. And as we went further north, again, to see the views open up again, and then to come back in through this amazing redwood forest, and to come home. And plus, we had a great time camping too. We had some good food and good laughs. We had a couple of fires, and it was good times.
Definitely.
I would love to go back there again with a few friends and just hang out and maybe, like you say, take a little more time. Maybe spend a little more time.
It's definitely my plan next time I go up there. I kind of want to break up Usalden Atoll and maybe camp at one of those BLM campgrounds or something like that. Yeah. Get out on foot, explore a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, Jer, it was a great trip. I hope you had fun. It sounds like you did.
Oh, I did.
I just want to thank you again for coming on the trip, coming on the show. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend. That's the end of episode 05 about the Lost Coast 4x4 trail. You can check all the details out about this particular trail at www.overlandtrailguides.com. And we'll be coming at you very soon, talking about other trails. Got to figure out what that's going to be. I think we might actually have Ed on soon.
Good.
He's been saying he wants to talk about Death Valley, so we'll have to figure something out.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Ed's a character, so you'll want to check that one out for sure.
Definitely. Hey, Ben, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. The trip was absolutely fabulous, and I hope we get to do many more.
Definitely. Happy trails.
Thanks, Ben.